A Dialogue of Comfort against Tribulation, by St. Thomas More, Book 3, Chapter 19, Part 2. Anthony. Tell me then, cousin, first, by your troth, if a man were attainted of treason or felony, and if, after judgment had been given of his death, and it were determined that he should die, the time of his execution were only delayed till the king's further pleasure should be known. If he were thereupon delivered to certain keepers, and put up in a sure place, out of which he could not escape, would this man be a prisoner or not? Vincent. This man, quoth he? Yea, marry, that would he be in very deed, if ever man were. But now what if, for the time that were between his attainder and his execution, he were so favourably handled that he were suffered to do what he would, as he did while he were free, to have the use of his lands and his goods, and his wife and his children to have license to be with him, and his friends leave at liberty to resort unto him, and his servants not forbidden to abide about him. And add yet thereunto, that the place were a great castle royal, with parks and other pleasures in it, a very great circuit about. Yes, and add yet, if you like, that he were suffered to go and ride also, both when he wished and whither he wished. Only this one point always provided and foreseen, that he should ever be surely seen to, and safely kept from escaping. So, though he had never so much of his own will in the meanwhile, in all matters save escaping, yet he should well know that escape he could not, and that when he were called for, to execution and to death he should go. Now, cousin Vincent, what would you call this man? A prisoner, because he is kept for execution? Or no prisoner, because he is in the meanwhile so favourably handled and suffered to do all that he would save escape? And I bid you not here be hasty in your answer, but advise it well, that you grant no such thing in haste as you would afterward at leisure mislike, and think yourself deceived. Nay, by my troth, uncle, this thing needeth no study at all, to my mind. But for all this favour showed him, and all this liberty lent him, yet being condemned to death, and being kept for it, and kept with sure watch laid upon him that he cannot escape, he is all that while a very plain prisoner still. In good faith, cousin, methinketh you say very true. But then one thing must I yet desire you, cousin, to tell me a little further. If there were another laid in prison for a brawl, and through the jailor's displeasure were bolted and fettered and laid in a low dungeon in the stocks, where he might lie peradventure for a while, and abide in the meantime some pain, but no danger of death at all, but that out again he should come well enough, which of these two prisoners would stand in the worst case? He that hath all this favour, or he that is thus hardly handled? By Our Lady, uncle, I believe that most men, if they should needs choose, had liefer be such prisoners in every point as he who so sorely lieth in the stocks, than in every point such as he who walketh at such liberty about the park. Consider then, cousin, whether this thing seem any sophistry to you, that I shall show you now. For it shall be such as seemeth in good faith substantially true to me. And if it so happen that you think otherwise, I will be very glad to perceive which of us both is beguiled. For it seemeth to me, cousin, first, that every man coming into this world here on earth, as he is created by God, so cometh he hither by the providence of God. Is this any sophistry, first, or not? Nay, verily, this is very substantial truth. Now, take I this also for very truth in my mind, that there cometh no man nor woman hither into the earth, but what, ere ever they come alive into the world out of the mother's womb, God condemneth them to death by his own sentence and judgment, for the original sin that they bring with them, contracted in the corrupted stock of our forefather Adam. Is this, think you, cousin, verily thus, or not? This is, uncle, very true indeed. Then seemeth this true further unto me, that God hath put every man here upon the earth under so sure and so safe keeping, that of all the whole people living in this wide world, there is neither man, woman, nor child, would they never so far wander about and seek it, who can possibly find any way by which they can escape from death. Is this, cousin, a fond imagined fancy, or is it very truth indeed? Nay, this is no imagination, uncle, but a thing so clearly proved true, that no man is so mad as to deny it. Then need I say no more, cousin, for then is all the matter plain and open, evident truth, which I said I took for truth. And it is yet a little more now than I told you before, when you took my proof yet but for a sophistical fancy, and said that, for all my reasoning that every man is a prisoner, yet you thought that, except those whom the common people call prisoners, there is else no man a very prisoner indeed. And now you grant yourself, again, for very substantial truth, that every man, though he be the greatest king upon earth, is set here by the ordinance of God in a place, be it never so large, yet a place, I say, and you say the same, out of which no man can escape. And you grant that every man is there put under sure and safe keeping, to be readily set forth when God calleth for him, and that then he shall surely die. And is not then, cousin, by your own granting before, every man a very prisoner, when he is put in a place to be kept, to be brought forth when he would not, and himself knows not whither? Yes, in good faith, uncle, I cannot but well perceive this to be so. This would be true, you know, even though a man were but taken by the arm, and in a fair manner led out of this world unto his judgment. But now we well know that there is no king so great, but what, all the while he walketh here, walk he never so loose, ride he with never so strong an army for his defence, yet he himself is very sure, though he seek in the meantime some other pastime to put it out of his mind, yet is he very sure, I say, that escape he cannot. And very well he knoweth that he hath already sentence given upon him to die, and that verily die he shall. And though he hope for long respite of his execution, yet can he not tell how soon it will be. And therefore, unless he be a fool, he can never be without fear that either on the morrow or on the self-same day, the grisly, cruel hangman Death, who from his first coming in hath ever hoved aloof, and looked toward him, and ever lain in wait for him, shall amid all his royalty and all his main strength, neither kneel before him, nor make him any reverence, nor with any good manner desire him to come forth. But he shall rigorously and fiercely grip him by the very breast, and make his bones rattle, and so, by long and divers sore torments, strike him stark dead in his prison. And then shall he cause his body to be cast into the ground in a foul pit in some corner of the same prison, there to rot and be eaten by the wretched worms of the earth, sending yet his soul out further into a more fearful judgment. Of that judgment, at his temporal death, his success is uncertain, and therefore, though by God's grace not out of good hope, for all that, in the meanwhile, in very sore dread and fear, and peradventure in peril inevitable, of eternal fire too. Methinketh therefore, cousin, that as I told you, this keeping of every man in this wretched world for execution of death is a very plain imprisonment indeed. And it is, as I say, such that the greatest king is in this prison in much worse case for all his wealth than is many a man who in the other imprisonment is sore and hardly handled. For while some of those lie not there attainted and condemned to death, the greatest man of this world and the most wealthy in this universal prison is laid in to be kept undoubtedly for death. But yet, uncle, in that case is the other prisoner too, for he is as sure that he will die, perdie. That is very true, cousin, indeed, and well objected too. But then you must consider that he is not in danger of death by reason of the prison into which he is put, peradventure, but for a little brawl. But his danger of death is by the other imprisonment, by which he is prisoner in the great prison of this whole earth, in which prison all the princes of the world be prisoners as well as he. If a man condemned to death were put up in a large prison, and while his execution were respited, he were, for fighting with his fellows, put up in a strait place, part of that prison, then would he be in danger of death in that strait prison, but not by the being in that, for there is he but for the brawl. But his deadly imprisonment was the other, the larger, I say, into which he was put for death. So the prisoner that you speak of is, besides the narrow prison, a prisoner of the broad world, and all the princes of the world are prisoners there with him. And by that imprisonment both they and he are in like danger of death, not by that strait imprisonment that is commonly called imprisonment, but by that imprisonment which, because of the large walk, men call liberty, and which you therefore thought but a sophistical fancy to prove it a prison at all. But now may you, methinketh, very plainly perceive that this whole earth is not only, for all the whole of mankind, a very plain prison indeed, but also that all men without exception, even those that are most at their liberty in it, and reckon themselves great lords and possessors of very great pieces of it, and thereby wax with wantonness so forgetful of their state that they think they stand in great wealth, do stand, for all that, indeed, by reason of their imprisonment in this large prison of the whole earth, in the self-same condition that the others do stand, who in the narrow prisons, which alone are called prisons, and which alone are reputed prisons in the opinion of the common people, stand in the most fearful and in the most odious case, that is, condemned already to death. And now, cousin, if this thing that I tell you seem but a sophistical fancy of your mind, I would be glad to know what moveth you so to think. For in good faith, as I have told you twice, I am no wiser, but what I verily think that it is very plain truth indeed. End of chapter 19.